Watching The Right Stuff with me, Matthew Wright, and them, David Ian, Carol Malone, and our special guest, Scott Capurro. Still to come. Cracks me up. Still to come, when should couples discuss their hopes and dreams for their life together? When do you think, Scott? On the first date? A year in?
What?
This is an entirely alien
Back
concept
off,
to you.
yeah.
On the first
This
anniversary?
Brazilian I'm seeing asked for a...
No.
What? It's clean. Really,
Okay,
it's
okay.
clean. No, he asked for a set of keys to my flat. We've been going out for 6 months. I'm like, I don't know you. Back off. I have nice stuff. Right?
0207 173 5555 is the number for your words of wisdom. And the same number too if you've got something to say to our greedy bankers. I have to say, I'm looking forward to your calls on this one. I want to know what you think about high street banks. Yesterday, all of them, bar Lloyds, TSB and Abbey, refused to pass on massive interest rate cuts. The Brentford and Bingley has now joined in, promising to cut, full cut to 1.5% to more than 90% of its customers. But that's still only 3 of our high street lenders. And the Bank of England, as I'm sure you're aware, slashed the base rate to 3%, the biggest single cut in 17 years. The last time we had rates this low, there you go, was 50 years ago when Churchill resigned following his second stint as PM. Houses, 2K they cost back then. Today, hundreds of thousands. With interest rates on mortgages staying high at 6%, over 7% at the Northern Rock, where I am. Well, we really are paying through the nose. To add insult to injury, it was only a month ago we saved their skins. I mean, banks, including RBS and HBOS, were handed billions of pounds of our taxes to keep them afloat. A year ago, Northern Rock, my mortgage company, took £100 billion of our cash. Right? Now, Gordon Brown has urged these bankers to pass on the interest rate cuts to you and me, but he hasn't compelled them to do so, just like he didn't compel them to scrap bonuses, which might explain why so many of these banks are sitting on their fat little piggy fingers right now. Some experts say mortgages will eventually drop 0.5% or maybe a bit more in a couple of weeks, but is that good enough? Others argue, and I think this is important, that big cuts, big interest rate cuts, would be bad news for savers at a rocky time, David, because there's one of these people withdrawing money because we're not getting proper promises that our money would be protected in banks.
Sure, but I think it's... At a time at which we're facing a recession, I think it's about, at the moment, the focus should be looking after, individuals with mortgages and small businesses. And I cannot see any argument at the moment for not passing on
none at all.
that cut in rates. All I can see is maintaining the profits of the banks.
Well, yeah.
And what I don't understand, and I haven't heard an answer from, is why can't the government compel the banks to pass on the interest rate? I don't understand why they can't make them.
As they handed over, they shed loads of money.
These are banks, as you've said, that we and the government have bailed out incredibly recently because of their own incompetence. Now there's a cut, and it's kept to maintain profits as opposed to pass it on to the people that helped bail them out in the first place, and the government say we can't make them. What's Alistair Darling playing at? I don't get it.
Jack Straw was on TV yesterday and he was asked that very question directly, and he said, we expect them to pass on it. And the interviewer said, no, what do you mean you expect? Why can't you demand that they pass it on? And what the excuse they keep on giving is this, the rates at which banks lend to each other, I think it's called the LIBOR, I think that's what it's called. They're saying that those rates are still very high, which is why they're not passing this on. Now, that might have held water, on the last interest rate cut, was only 0.5%. 1.5%, they have to pass on. And the government, if they have to have any credibility with us anymore, they've taken our money to bail these banks out. They have to have any credibility. They have to say to them now, you've got to do this. And there's no justification at all for these banks to be paying billions of pounds out in bonuses when they are not going to pass on any of this to the people who actually have kept them afloat. And that
There's
is
another
us.
part to this, because I get the funny feeling that having lent them all this money, as in we've given them all this money, that we're not going to see any changes at all, right? 1, the bonuses are still being paid. 2, the interest rates cuts come. 3, there's a meeting of EU finance chiefs going on today where I know a lot of the countries are going to be saying, well, I know a lot of people are saying we should change the way banking is run because it's just driven the world into the floor. But if we do that, it might restrict growth. So there's this sort of argument where we've done so well for so many years, let's just carry on doing it. And if we run into trouble again, we'll get the...
The feeling is we've always been ripped off and we're going to continue to be ripped off. It's nothing's changed. Not even a world recession is changing that.
Now, Scott, you were saying earlier you thought the American mismanaged mortgage companies should have been allowed to go to the floor. Well, what do you think here? Do you think we're being ripped off?
Well, I don't feel like I'm being ripped off because my mortgage went down last month, actually. So
you really are. You're all right.
It's really all
just
about me.
Scott Capurro against the world.
But I guess somebody's getting ripped off somewhere. I don't know them.
Well, are the British people being ripped off? We have put billions into these banks, which some of the money is going to be used to pay bonuses, right? Bonuses for running companies, running countries into the ground. And then there's this big cut, and we don't see any of it.
But some of these bonuses I've read are for middle-class workers, and it was an assured part of their salary that they really couldn't live without.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have jobs if it hadn't been for taxpayers bailing them out.
Right, yeah, sure.
It's all very well complaining about, you know...
And the definition of the word bonus, I think, is for doing above the ordinary.
Yeah.
These guys haven't even achieved the ordinary.
Perhaps what we should do, everyone who was with these banks should withdraw their money from them and put them with the banks that are giving the cuts. Should we not say that?
It's a thought.
What is a thought? Why don't we punish them?
Because you'll probably find, as many people did when they tried to move money before, that you'll get someone saying, oh, we can't possibly do that for you at the moment, or that you can't get through on the phone, or whatever. Let's throw it open to you. It'll be interesting to hear what you have to say to our high street banks. Amy.
We've got some very angry callers. We're going to start with Charlotte on line 3.
Morning, Charlotte.
Good morning, Matthew.
Now, I've heard you've taken a bit of action here. You've made some calls, is that right?
I have, Matthew. I have to say, I agree with Scott that really and truly what should have happened, the government should have guaranteed every saver's money and then should have said it to the banks, off you go and sort out your own mess. The banks now have absolutely no incentive in running prudent businesses because the government have used it as a safety net.
Well said.
When the last interest rate happened, I rang Northern Rock, with whom I have a mortgage, and asked them why they weren't passing on the rate. This is their actual wording. The girl said to me, because we don't have to. I lodged a formal complaint, which is going through at the minute. I've written to Gordon Brown. He's written back to me and said to me that he's going to make the Treasury aware of my comments, because clearly they already don't know what's going on. With regard to the latest interest rate, I have been made to be a shareholder of these banks. Normally when you're a shareholder, it is a matter of choice and you get a dividend. The government should say to these banks, this cut is a dividend to the shareholders, which are the taxpayers. If you do not pass this on in full, you will be fined and punished.
Charlotte should be on this panel.
She should. You know what, Charlotte?
That's eloquent.
The other thing about this nationalisation or quasi-nationalisation of the banks is, you think about it when we sold British Gas and all our utilities, they were nationalised companies. We were all shareholders in those companies.
Yeah,
and
but
yet
Matthew,
I didn't get any money for them, and in fact, my bills have gone up.
Matthew, do you know what I did?
Go on.
I wrote to Gordon about that as well. And I said to him, I'm not getting my dividend. Can you please let me know where you want me to send my bank details? Because I'm not getting my dividend. And guess what? He hasn't written back to me.
No.
Also, I have to say, I failed to accept that a few bad mortgages in America has caused this absolute meltdown. I think this is more to do with financing the war in Iraq.
Maybe. I mean, there's a real shortage of cash out there, that's for sure. Interesting. Charlotte, thank you. I love an agitator, don't you?
She was
really
good.
do. Yeah. Amy?
OK, we've got Tony from Gloucester on line 2.
Tony, good morning.
Morning, Matthew.
Now, what do you think? Are the banks ripping us off?
They are ripping us off, but the people that get ripped off first, they do pass the mortgage, the interest rate cut on to investors.
Yeah.
I've already phoned my bank. I had words with them. Told them I was going to draw it out, and they gave me a bit more interest.
Is that right? Because as a saver, you were worried that the interest on your savings would virtually disappear.
Yeah, I'm an old age pensioner. Well, I'm 69 years of age. But in 1974, I haven't got a great lot of sympathy with these mortgage payers, Mike, because in 1974, I had to put £1,115 down on a $5,150 mortgage, and that got to 15%. I had 3 kids then to feed. So,
I mean, for any younger person, I mean, it seems incomprehensible that anyone could buy a house for £5,000. But then lots of people made lots of money out of them. That's
My
the
mum
thing.
and dad bought this for £1,800.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'll just remember that. Don't try and work out.
No. Tony, thank you for the call. Let's have another.
OK, we've got Carol on line 1.
Morning, Carol.
Good morning.
So this is all for the benefit of savers. What do you say to that, then?
Well, we are a small business, my partner and I, and we have one guy we employ. We employ quite a few others as subcontractors. Our typical bank loan would be $100,000. We went to our bank after interest rates dropped the last time and said we wanted $100,000 to finish a house. We were told that instead of paying our normal 2% over base, we'd be paying 4.2 over base. On top of that, we would pay a 3% arrangement fee, another $3,000. And on top of that, if we haven't sold the house in a year after finishing it and we need to renew this fee, would be another £3,000. And even if we only wanted it for another month or 2 months, we would get no refund on the $3,000. So if we wanted finance now, £100,000 for a year and 2 months, it would cost us £6,000 in arrangement fees and 4.2 of a base, which works out, I don't know, on top of that, 12%. Why can't they still pay their savers a reasonable fee?
The worst thing is you just know they've got you over a barrel. That's the bit that gets me.
We can't take our overdraft somewhere else. You know, it's all right to say, well, take your money out of the bank and go somewhere else. Where can you take your overdraft and your loan and your business loan?
I do feel Gordon Brown and Alistair Darling, they really let us down. They handed over our money and they didn't get a proper deal that guaranteed we were going to be looked after. Small businesses, they said at the time, it's to help small businesses. And then we hear your story. It's a shocker. Carol, thank you. Wish you the best as well. I don't know what the house is worth now. Maybe it's worth buying.
Remember, Gordon Brown also said that companies should not chuck people out of their homes for credit card debts. It's happening. It's happening all over the country. He's doing nothing about that either.